Age of Iron, a game I'm sure very few of you have heard about, but which has some of the most interesting geopolitics in all of Roblox. At first glance, the game looks rather simple. Large battles, Total War style combat, players clashing across the map, but if you only play on public servers, you'll get bored pretty quickly. Coordination is rare, teamwork is difficult, and most players just do their own thing. More of a chaotic free-for-all than a true strategy game. But, should you choose to join their Discord as I have, you will find the game's true potential. Diplomacy, schemes, and wars all happen there, with nations rising and falling, and like many before me, I had fallen in love, and created my very own nation, inspired by one of my favorite historical figures, Seleucus, one of Alexander's many successors. I created the Seleucid Empire. At first, I struggled, but with the assistance of my second-in-command Malik, I had managed to rally just enough players to be recognized as an official nation. I quickly began scheduling friendly battles and taking note of the diplomacy, before laying my eyes on Sparta, a nation which had grown wealthy and powerful, but due to a lack of wars, its players and leaders had grown complacent. Shortly after, we declared a war, only for the Spartans to unexpectedly back down and offer to negotiate. We quickly secured a deal in which Sparta ceded Antioch and the Phoenician coast to the Seleucids in exchange for trade rights. Despite securing the wealthy coast of the Levant, further expansion would become impossible following the defeat of Carthage by Rome, and the beginning of the Pax Romana, a time of inactivity in which, due to the dominance of Rome and its constant intervention in foreign affairs, no nation had dared to declare wars, as Rome would always try to prevent the rise of any major power. Having mostly given up on the game, I moved on to other projects, but a month later, I got pinged. My right-hand man, Malik, wished to take the throne and revive the nation. I had agreed, even joking about the fact that I might return, but maintained my inactive state, for now. In my absence, Malik, with his usual shrewd diplomacy, had signed an alliance with one of two Persian factions, Elymais, to secure his eastern flank, only for the other faction, the Sassanid Empire, to declare war. While I kept an eye on the conflict, I assumed that Rome, like always, will put an end to the war before it could even start. But yet again, the diplomatic skill of Malik surprisingly managed to get the Romans to back down. On the day of the battle, Malik was absent. The burden fell to me, commanding just 8 wary players, half of them allies, against 10 enemies led by one of the greatest players in Age of Iron, the Sassanid Shahanshah, Marcus. The situation was desperate, but I organized my men nevertheless, and prepared for the battle to come. As the game started, I already decided that I would take the fight to the enemy. The Sassanids expected us to remain on the defensive due to being outnumbered, but were quickly surprised when my forces moved with haste and stopped in the outskirts of a town. The Persians had an impressive army, 15,000 infantry and 2,000 archers against my force of just 10,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry. Quickly taking notice of my superiority in cavalry, I ordered my riders to flank around and harass the enemy's rear. The Sassanid Shahanshah, in return, ordered his infantry to form a half circle on their left to protect the infantry and archers from being hit in the rear. This move, however, was a critical mistake. With his infantry line now equal in size to mine, I ordered my forces to charge, smashing into the Persian line while my cavalry switched flanks, hitting the right side of the Persians and destroying it in its entirety. The surprised Persian contingent, who was supposed to protect the rear, quickly got encircled by the rest of my army. I had managed to win an amazing victory, inflicting nearly 7 times the casualties before retreating safely to my camp. But the battle was not over. The Sassanid army hastily respawned, and with the timer ticking, they quickly went on the attack, this time bringing their own cavalry force to match mine. But having taken some casualties, and without time to heal, my forces were nevertheless forced to make a stand, and with the infantry bravely holding their ground against a numerically superior foe, my cavalry routed their Persian counterparts and once more hit them in the rear. In the end, we had won at the cost of all of our infantry, but the sacrifice was worth it. By the time the demoralized Persians managed to come back for a third and final engagement, my infantry respawned, and several of their players had already left the game, their spirits broken. The day was over, and me and my men not only prevailed, but had won a brilliant and unquestionable victory. The news sent shockwaves throughout the entire community. Having won the Battle of Atropatene, I had reached out to the Persians to negotiate a peace treaty. only requesting that one border province be handed to the Seleucid Empire. But to my surprise, the Sassanids had disbanded, unwilling or rather unable to fight any further. With my northern flank and the loyalty of Elymais secure, I could finally turn my gaze to the west. Following the disbandment of the Sassanids, the furious Romans, angry at the loss of their main Middle Eastern ally, began preparing to invade the Seleucids. But first, they had to deal with a conflict brewing in Greece. The wealthy state of Sparta had grown weak, and its neighbors, Macedon and Byzantium, laid claim to much of their lands, preparing to declare war, only to be stopped after their own ally, Rome, had chosen to side with Sparta, forcing both nations to revoke their declaration in humiliation. The Roman Emperor, Maximus, had plans to expand into the trade hub that was the Black Sea, and especially laid his eyes on the coastal province of Sinnop, the capital of Pontus. But despite his desperate situation, the leader of Pontus, Zeus, a notoriously toxic player, declared his intention to invade the Seleucid ally of Elymais, bringing my nation too into the war. And so, both Roman and Seleucid armies rushed to conquer Pontus, only for the leader to get banned and overthrown by a group of Pontic officers. With the radical leader of Pontus removed, the war had lost all casus belli, and I had chosen to make peace, only to find out that Rome continued the war anyway, unwilling to give up on its Black Sea ambitions. But this decision was their greatest mistake. My right-hand man and diplomat, Morisco, had gathered a coalition made up of Numidia, Elymais, and Yildiran, while I had managed to broker a peace treaty and convince Macedon, Pontus, and Byzantium to join the newly found coalition known as the MEB, or the Middle Eastern Bloc. Despite Pontus now being under new leadership and part of the MEB, the Romans refused to abandon the war. And so, the day I had prepared for had come. I gathered allies, trained my men, and gained experience commanding armies. I was ready to take on the biggest challenge in the server yet, defeating the mightiest empire in Age of Iron, Rome. But before a single sword swing was exchanged, arguments had already begun regarding how the battle would happen. But eventually, we had come to an agreement. A 10 versus 10 deathmatch to decide the fate of Sinnop. The day of the battle came, and the MEB's army, consisting of all Greek factions, had agreed that due to my experience, I would be the one to command. Defeating Rome would be no easy feat. Rome had fought its fair share of wars against many factions, and its leaders had led armies long before I discovered the game. But I would be up for the challenge. The battle started when I ordered my army to advance. Arriving in front of the Romans, they formed up, their infantry line stretched far beyond mine, risking encirclement should I choose to engage head-on. So I chose a different strategy. First, I gave a speech, rallying my men to the cause of expelling the Roman invaders from our lands. Then, with their morale heightened, I ordered them to advance. Splitting my army into two as they went, the larger part continued its charge, smashing into the Roman line. Then I, leading the companion cavalry personally, charged into their rear. Meanwhile, on the other flank, I purposefully ordered my forces to walk slowly, forcing 3 Roman cohorts to remain in place against just 2 of mine. By the time they realized my plan, it was already too late. Their army was utterly destroyed, and my army turned to finish them off. The day was once more won, but the relentless Romans wouldn't give up so easily. They respawned, preparing for yet another battle. My battered forces retreated further and further behind the camp to heal. Once my units healed up, I ordered my forces to halt their retreat and counterattack before springing my trap. The leader of Byzantium, player Green Havoc, had not respawned up until this point, and his infantry were in the perfect positions to flank the Romans. The encircled Latins were quickly defeated, and the MEB has come out victorious once more. Following this great victory, the Romans agreed to negotiate, giving up Egypt and other minor territories, while promising not to intervene in the affairs of the East. With Rome no longer in their path, Byzantium and Macedon partitioned Sparta, and Elymais would go on to join the Seleucid Empire. Having achieved my dream of reuniting the empire of Alexander with both alliance and territory, the players and rulers of the various factions agreed that the time has come for a reset. Season 2 has just begun, with each faction once more competing for dominance over the vast lands of Europe and the Mediterranean. If you want to create and lead your very own nation in this chaos, the link to the Discord is in the description. I put a lot of effort into this video, so if you could like, subscribe, and comment as a sacrifice to the algorithm, I would appreciate it. Thank you, and have a good day.